let us know when you're live, please.
Yeah, could you let us know when you're live, please? Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the open meeting of the Guelph Police Services Board for October. And I'll call the meeting to order now, and we will do the territorial acknowledgement. Today we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabeg peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting. Item number 3 on the agenda, are there any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Not seeing any. Closed session resolutions. I believe, Mr. Mayor, you had some.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. It was moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Billings, that we have 2 community groups that we would like to support from the community account at this time, with a $500 deposit to St. John's Ambulance and $1,000 requested to go to Cops for Kids program. So those are the 2 amounts to those 2 organizations, and we thank them for applying and requesting the funds, and we wish them all the best. Over to you.
All those in favor of that motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Presentations is item number 5 on the agenda, and it's about Guelph Police Service promotions. And Chief, I understand you're going to be speaking to this.
I am, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure you can hear me before I start.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good.
So welcome everyone. Obviously, it's not quite the same because we're still virtually. Maybe a few months from now, we'll be back together in person. But Daryl and I together, on behalf of the service, wanted to highlight some pretty significant accomplishments for several of our members. There's some new faces here that, well, we can't see them all because all the windows aren't open. But as you know, there's been a lot going on in the last year and a half. That's included a lot of transition. And the only way we can lead our organization into the future to ensure the safety and security of our community is to continue building great leaders. And the service is very, very fortunate to have world-class employees and fantastic leaders. So I wanted to congratulate a number of folks here today who have recently been promoted. Inspector Andrew Goody, Inspector Dave Doxey are our 2 new inspectors recently promoted from the rank of Staff Sergeant. We have 3 new Staff Sergeants, which include Staff Sergeant Phil Perrins, Melanie Clark, and Ben Bear. And we have a number of new sergeants, all recent new promotions, which include Sergeant Ralph Newman, Sergeant Sean Dunsmore, Sergeant James Graham, Sergeant Dave Cawley, Sergeant Scott Charlton, Sergeant Ian Smith, Sergeant Brandon McKenzie, Sergeant Earl Lane, and Sergeant Trevor Baird. So it is really a pleasure for all of us, and for those of you who are here with us. Not all of them could be here. I see Andrew in my window, but it's leadership is a great opportunity and a great responsibility. So it's really important. I think Daryl and I and our whole service and the board thank those who take on leadership roles. There's never been a more difficult time to be in policing. So leading in policing is an important and difficult task. So as you guys have learned, Daryl is more wise than I. So Daryl, I'd like to give you just a sec to add to that if you have any thoughts.
I just wanted to thank the new promotees, and you're a fine addition to the management team here, and we're looking forward to many bright things as your careers progress through the organization, and your promotions are making us stronger. So thank you very much for your commitment and going through a very long promotional process, I might add. There were some delays because of COVID, because of exams, et cetera, that had to be administered by the Ontario Police College. So thank you for your patience. I know that took a toll on the studying packages are extensive for their commitment to get to this position. So thanks for taking a bold step forward. It is a personal sacrifice to get where you are. Thank you.
And on behalf of the board, I'd like to congratulate the promotees. Is that, I'm not sure if that's a word, but anyway, you get the picture. So, and all the best in your new positions. Okay. Next is homecoming presentation, and it says here on the agenda it's going to be Inspector Scott Grover, sorry. Scott, are you ready to go?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Share my screen.
Mr. Chair, while Scott's getting the screen ready, may I have a moment?
Sure, yes.
I just want to introduce Scott Grover, the inspector, who, along with Dave Doxey, oversaw the day that you're about to see unfold before you. So I just wanted to thank them for their commitment to that day as well. And they're the ones that basically drove this plan home and kept Guelph safe during this event. So I just want to thank them while they were getting ready.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, Mr. Chair, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to the events from September 25th. I'll start with that. Our organization began planning for this homecoming. It was a unique homecoming as we were still in the midst of a pandemic, but we anticipated that it was going to be a traditional style homecoming. We did have our organization, myself and Inspector Doxey, did have discussions. We participated in the Town and Gown Committee. And for reference, within the Town and Gown Committee, there's representation from the University of Guelph Campus Safety, leadership from the University of Guelph, including at that time Vice Provost Carrie Chassels. We had Scott Green from City of Guelph Corporate Community Safety was a participant in these meetings. There was also representation from the South End neighborhood groups as well, and leadership from University of Guelph off-campus housing. So we took those discussions, and then from those discussions, we began the development of our organization's operational plan. And the step-off point for that was the creation of our mission. And the mission statement for this plan is that our service was committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of all persons and their property within the City of Guelph, whether or not they were participating in the events from September 25th. The goal, the objective, was for our service to lead a progressive and a measured response to the festivities that were anticipated on September 25th. This operational plan, Mr. Chair, was very resource heavy. For this response, our service had over 30 additional officers deployed, and I will speak to the final number. It came at a cost of $36,190 to our organization to pay for the additional sworn and civilian members that participated in managing this event. There were, as you've likely read within the media, there were additional bylaw officers deployed. And because this event went longer than had anticipated, we also had to assign our regularly scheduled operational resources, some of our regular resources, to assist with managing Chancellor's Way on September 25th. Provide you with a timeline of Chancellor's Way, and as you can see, we were not fortunate to have a overcast, rainy day. As you can see, close to 3 o'clock, there was still nobody on the street, yet as we just past 4:30, you can see there at 4:42 was when a gathering began to occupy Chancellor's Way. And then that crowd grew to approximately 2,000, 2,500 individuals, as you can see in the bottom right corner of that photograph at 6:30 p.m. I want to speak to some notable events of the day, and the crowd remained until approximately just after 3:30 a.m. And that was due to, well, the rain suppressing the gathering until it was able to get off the ground at 4:40. There were our bylaw officers and our Guelph officers laid nearly 50 charges. And of note, there were 310 calls for service between 10 a.m. and 3 a.m. So in a typical 24-hour time period, our organization will receive around 200 calls for service, so a 50% increase in calls for service related to the events of September 25th. There was also 7 individuals that were taken to the hospital for a range of issues, from being struck in the head with a beer bottle to severe levels of intoxication. A significant event of this gathering was a 19-year-old Mississauga male was arrested for shooting fireworks into the crowd. And of note, this individual was not a University of Guelph student. You can see in the photograph, what occurred there was a civilian vehicle was attempting to leave one of the parking lots on Chancellor's Way when an individual from the crowd had smashed through a window. Unfortunately, our officers on ground were not able to identify who in fact was responsible for that. The way for our organization is, how do we do it better? How do we improve our response? How do we approach it from an effective, efficient perspective? Is we've begun the post-analysis of the event, and we plan on assessing what best practices and strategies we can implement for next year. We are liaising with other organizations that implemented some strategies that were successful, but we will be continuing to discuss what was effective and what was not effective, what was economical, what was not an economical response to their homecoming events. I can comment that these additional measures will come at a cost to our organization to manage these future unexpected, unsanctioned gatherings. Our organization is also committed to an intelligence-led response to these, and we'll continue what we can to monitor social media so we're able to effectively and adequately deploy our limited resources and to ensure that we're able to maintain focus on our vision. So that concludes the summary from the 25th, Mr. Chair, if you have any questions.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay, good. Rod, then Christine.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the organizing committee here. They did a great job. And I have one question. Did campus safety bring in extra people to help with crowd control?
They did. So through you, Mr. Chair,
Yep.
Campus Safety Office did have additional officers on. We did as well, Mr. Chair. We assigned some of our GPS officers to support the Campus Safety Office. And it was through a participative partnership that we were receiving intelligence from Campus Safety as to if there were more students leaving campus heading to the direction of Chancellor's Way, so we could then stand up our resources on ground at Chancellor's Way to anticipate more people coming.
Thanks.
Councillor Billings.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask, with respect to all the homecoming events, even on the University of Guelph campus, were there any other expenses? Because was the 36 not just for that particular event?
That was through you, Mr. Chair. That was the cost just for September 25th. Our service also has an initiative called Safe Semester, where we assign additional officers to the downtown core to support our regularly staffed members with the influx of students to the University of Guelph, and also downtown core and to the South End neighborhoods to assist with managing calls for service. And there was a tally done on that, Mr. Chair, and that additional cost to our organization recommendation was $29,504 for the additional resources that our organization deployed over Project Safe Semester, and that runs from the start of September to the start of October.
And also, I mean, I've asked this question, I think almost every year now for a while. There is a funding relationship with other police services and universities. So I think it's Queen. So I was just going to ask you, do we have any funding relationship with the University of Guelph to help pay and cover for some of these costs?
At this time, Mr. Chair, through you, our organization does not have a funding relationship with the University of Guelph.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Mayor Guthrie, then Rod.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I too have been wanting to ask some questions in regards to the finances and the impacts of financial to the service, and that obviously flows down to the taxpayers of Guelph. And so, Mr. Chair, I actually would like to move a motion in regards to this matter. I believe this would be the first time a motion like this would ever come forward, but in my view, enough is enough, and we have to do this. And I hope that I have the board's support. So I'd like to move a motion that, and let me just find it here. It's two parts, actually, Mr. Chair, and to the board. I'm just adding another part to it. So that the Guelph Police Services Board request full reimbursement of the total invoice of policing expenses, estimated to be $65,000, for impacts both on and off campus to ensure the safety of students and citizens during Project Safe Semester and Homecoming. That's the first part. And the second part I'm adding is, and that a funding arrangement be made between the services and the University of Guelph, and that funding arrangement be brought back to the board before September 2022.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any discussion? Rod?
Yes, can we include St. Patty's Day in there? Because that's a large event. We haven't heard anything with the cost of that. Do we know the cost? What we paid for St. Patty's Day?
Did you want to amend your motion to include that, or?
Yeah, I could, Mr. Chair, or I could add the words and other unsanctioned gatherings connected to the University of Guelph. So I can be specific to Safe Semester Project Safe Semester, sorry, Homecoming, and other unsanctioned gatherings connected to the University of Guelph. And I'd be happy if that was a friendly, then I don't know if Councillor Billings would like to second that.
Yes, that friendly works.
Okay, Peter?
He's muted.
I think you're muted, Peter.
You're still muted.
Sorry, my mouse disappeared when I tried to unmute myself. I apologize. Yeah, I'm going to suggest for clarity that any reference to St. Paddy's Day would be going forwards, not in reverse, not retroactive. And we can send a message that the policing costs have to be taken into account in their plannings of events going forward. So,
I think my motion covers that. Yeah, so we're good.
well, I'm sorry, I was just adding of the St. Patrick's Day when you asked the question about the cost, seems that was retroactive.
Yes, so if I could, Mr. Chair, on Project Safe Semester and Homecoming, those happened in the past, but the additional wording I added was, and other unsanctioned gatherings, that's future.
Rod,
Yeah, just for curiosity, what did we pay for overtime for St. Patty's Day last year? Our police costs.
Deputy Chief?
Last year, because of the pandemic, the event really didn't unfold
That's right.
to what we just saw with the unofficial homecoming.
Okay. Are you ready for the motion then? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. All right. So Inspector Grubber, did you have any final comments on this, or were you pretty much done?
I have one last comment, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment that as we look around the province and we've witnessed what has happened at other unsanctioned gatherings, that I'd like to say that the successful management of our homecoming or unsanctioned gathering on September 25th was due to the discipline and professionalism of the members that supported that event.
Yeah. So, Rod?
I just wonder, Scott, is there a committee province-wide of all the universities and police to discuss these homecomings and other events to get some ideas on how to do it in the future?
There is, Mr. Curran. It's through you, Mr. Chair. It's the Town and Gown Association of Ontario. So it's a body that provides a coordinated voice for all post-secondary institutions to work within the municipalities, the first responders within those municipalities, the residents, the property owners that provide room and board to universities. That's the body, the overarching umbrella body is the Town and Gown Association of Ontario, where there are meetings where this commentary is shared with the collective groups.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Chief.
Yeah, and before we end off on this agenda item, Mr. Chair, I also think it's really important to highlight the outstanding cooperation and working relationship we have with all our partners, but certainly our campus safety partners. Mr. Dave Lee and his staff, they work extremely well with us. Dave was here with us during the event when it unfolded that day. So I think it's important that we highlight the excellent working relationship and support that we can give each other during what is always a busy month of the year.
Okay, thanks. Chief, on behalf of the board, would you please extend our appreciation to all those involved in this effort? I know it probably was not easy, and it was probably stressful, and any other adjectives you can apply to that. But I want them to know that the board was very appreciative of all of these efforts that were put out in a very difficult situation. So if you could pass that along, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, and Scott, you're good. You're done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, well let's move on then to the next item, which is approval, part one, the approval of the agenda, part one, which is consent agenda. Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
I would like to move consent, except for one item I quickly wouldn't mind pulling for a quick discussion and potential motion for the board on the community account update report. So I'm happy to move the consent on everything else.
Okay. And seconder, Christine Billings. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. So did you want to proceed then on, we'll move to the discussion agenda, and the first item was what you wanted moved. Okay.
Certainly, I can do that this quickly, Mr. Chair. The one item I pulled from consent there around the community account.
Yeah.
As the report states, we're looking at around $70,000 in that account. It is used for community good, if I could, high level say it that way. And so, like I have done the last, I believe, 3 years or 4 years now, at this time of year, there is a collective of stakeholders that get together to support the Welcoming Streets initiative to help with the most vulnerable and those with addictions and other issues that they're struggling with within our downtown core. It's been a very, very successful program the last few years. And so I would like to, it really can only happen, Mr. Chair, through you to the board, if everyone sort of pulls together in how this funding comes together. So I would like to move a motion that the Guelph Police Services Board contribute $15,000 from the community account to help fund the Welcoming Streets initiative for the 2022 year, and that these funds only be contributed if the initiative is fully funded.
Seconder?
Seconded, it looks like, by Councillor Billings.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Question. Oh, do you have a question?
So I do. So through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. So I believe was 15,000 the same amount from last year from the community account? You moved 15,000. Was last year's around 15,000 as well? Do you remember?
I think it might have been. It's been 4 years, and I can't remember. I think it's been maybe 10, 15.
Okay.
10, 15. It's been the same every year. It might have been 10.
Okay.
I believe 15,000 is worthwhile. It's up to the board, of course, but I'm not far off. I don't think. I believe it was either 10 or 15.
Okay. Thanks for that, Mr. Mayor.
Rod Curran, you had a question? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the amount as long as there's accountability, because that's a lot of money, 15,000. If they could give us a report back how it was spent.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they do have annual reports, and I'm happy to ask for the impacts that they have. And I ask for those same annual reports from an accountability point of view with the money that the city contributes and others contribute to. So it's a very, very valid question. The value for the money spent needs to be shown. There is value, which is a good thing to hear, but happy to send that information through the chair to the board.
Thank you.
Okay. Ready for the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. All right. So I believe that we moved that out of the consent agenda. For the remaining items, do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, we're just moving the one that the mayor pulled because we already moved and approved the other one. So all we're doing is moving the one that the mayor pulled, the community account. So
okay.
That's all we're doing.
Right, but okay, I thought we might need a motion to accept the consent agenda, then what's left, but no. Okay. All right. So part two, sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, we need to call the vote now on that report. I moved the motion on that report,
okay, sorry.
but we have to move the motion about that report, and then that covers the entirety of the consent, and then we can move on. Yeah.
Okay,
So, Mr. Councillor Billings moved that one. I'm
Yeah.
happy to second it, that report. And you can call the vote if you wish.
all those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, now we're ready. Part 2 is our discussion agenda, and 6.7 is the 2022 to 2025 operating budget and forecast approval. Chief, did you want to introduce this?
Sure, yes, I'm happy to do that. So obviously, I gave a presentation in September, so I'm not going to go through the entire presentation. I welcome any specific questions. Lisa can give a very high-level update. You'll notice that the budget proposal that you have before you is approximately 0.8% reduced from the one that you saw in September. Lisa has worked hard with the city to find out where costs can be reduced, and throughout the budget process, what we've worked very, very hard to do is to make sure that while always being mindful that ours is a tax-supported budget, and we have a responsibility to ensure the most prudent and responsible use of our public funds. We're trying to make sure that we're also maintained focused on the safety of the community. I think we can all recall the time when in 2011, for many years, we had been the safest community in the country, and we had fallen in 2018 to 19th. Thankfully, the investment that the community made in 2020, in the last 2 years, the return on that investment has led to an improvement with respect to our crime severity index, an improvement with respect to our crime rates. Our overtime's been reduced, and our response times have been reduced. So we're beginning to see the return on that investment. So what our goal in this budget has been to find the balance between realizing we have to be, we have to get to the safety of the community while also being reasonable with respect to the ask on the part of community resources. So with that said, Lisa, if you want to give the board a real high-level update with respect to what changed between September and now, and where the approximate percent decrease, 0.8, I think, was found.
Okay, sure. So from the September report, the budget has been reduced by $405,000. We worked with the city, and there were a couple of items that we were able to decrease from the internal charges, and one was utilities. It was a small amount. I don't have that number in front of me, but the other one was a capital transfer to our reserve to fund our capital, and that was about $85,000. The remaining items for the decrease was labor and benefits. We took another look at our labor budget, and we were able to get it down the rest of the way. So it was a 0.79% decrease, or $405,000.
Okay. Any questions? Not seeing any. Are you ready for the motion? Do I have a motion for approval? Rod, seconded by Peter. All those in favor? And that's passed. Yes, thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Chief's monthly report.
Okay. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair? Sorry, I'm navigating through a few screens right here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Christine,
Sorry, maybe Councillor Billings has a question while I'm making my way here.
could we, sorry to interrupt, Chief. Christine has her hand up.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, before the chief continues, is the best time to deal with the request to increase the percentage of our contingency reserve now, to move that motion now to go along with the budget, so the correspondence of the budget and the request for the budget sorry, the contingency to go along with that request to the city? I'm just asking
Yes,
now.
thank you. Thank you, Christine. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so I think I'm correct with respect to right now with the contingency, we have 1%, and that's 1% of a budget. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes, that's a city policy and it's roughly 1%.
Okay, so I think I'm hoping Leslie or Cheryl has a motion, but I'd like to request a 5%. And the biggest reasons why is the multi-year budgeting and possibly mitigating the grant revenue issues. And I think I feel it would be prudent of us to make this request to the city. So I would move, Cheryl, do you have, or Leslie, a motion for that request to the city?
Yes, we've got a draft here, and I can read it to you. So that the Guelph Police Services Board requests full reimbursement of the total invoice of policing. Oh, so I'm sorry, it's the wrong one.
Wrong one.
It's my first one. Okay, it's whereas the city of Guelph has implemented multi-year budgeting, and whereas long-standing provincial grant revenue has been relied upon to ensure the provision of adequate and effective policing services by the Guelph Police Service, and whereas there is ongoing uncertainty as to whether these provincial grant revenues will continue, and whereas the Guelph Police Services Board requires an increase to the police operating contingency reserve to mitigate fluctuations in provincial grant revenues, be it resolved that the Guelph Police Services Board requests that the City of Guelph increase the police operating contingency reserve from 1% to 5% immediately, commencing with the 2021 budget and any potential surplus, and that the board communicate this request to the City of Guelph.
Well, you said that much more eloquently than myself. So I will move that motion, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay. Seconder. Mr. Curran, thank you. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay. Was there anything else, Chief, that were you complete there on that item?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Curran has his hand up. I'm ready to proceed with my monthly update whenever you're good.
Oh, okay. Mr. Curran?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Chair Billings and her committee for all the hard work they've done here, plus Lisa and all the staff at the police department. It's greatly appreciated by the citizens of Guelph and by our committee here. So I just want to thank them for the hard work.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Mr. Curran. Okay. Over to Chief.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in my monthly, my chief's update this month, I thought I wanted to take a few minutes and make sure the board was aware of how grateful we are. So we were invited in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. We wanted to publicly thank Mr. Bruce Weaver for inviting us to participate in the Kairos blanket exercise. The exercise is a workshop that explores the nation-to-nation relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada. And as I know the board is aware, but our first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is a day that honors the lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families and communities, and public commemoration of the tragic and painful history and ongoing impacts of residential schools is a vital component of the reconciliation process. And it was a tremendous opportunity for myself and Inspector Steve Gill. We got to participate with several other members of our community in an exercise that really, I think, left us all with a much greater appreciation and a much greater understanding of the experience that our Indigenous citizens and their ancestors have have navigated through. So we were so grateful that Mr. Weaver reached out and gave us that opportunity. Daryl and I have already had a chance since to speak with Mr. Weaver and look forward to the opportunity to learning from him and other elders within our community moving forward. And kind of in recognition of that important day, I wanted to give the board a bit of an update. I know the board is aware of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls National Enquiry report that was released some time ago. But in that report, it highlighted a number of important calls for justice or calls for action that are directed at various levels of governments, including governing bodies and police services. And a number of the 231 calls for action speak specifically to police services and municipal police services. And so I'd like to just go through, I'll just stop there for a sec, Mr. Chair, to see if anyone has any question. And I want to give a bit of an overview of some of the things the service has been doing to kind of make sure that we are responding to those calls for action and doing our best to continue to improve in relation to a number of areas. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, and see if there's any questions before I continue.
Any questions for the chief at this point? No? Okay.
Okay.
Continue.
So a number of these, now I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to give some highlights with respect to areas that we've been working on recently. For example, call 9.2 is a call for police services to build respectful working relationships with Indigenous peoples by knowing, understanding, and respecting the people that we are serving. We're constantly looking at our policies and procedures to make sure that we are updating them. We are both culturally appropriate, and that our procedures are bias and free of any racism, free of any bias, free of any unconscious bias. So we're working really hard to modernize and change those. Some examples of that, for example, are Constable James Nightingale, who is our Indigenous Liaison Officer, has been connecting and working with our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee to assist in building knowledge and cultural competence for our service. This has included reaching out to different members of our service. As you recall, a few months ago, we did mandatory training that we completed for our members, working with several leaders and elders in our community. We're very grateful and want to thank Mr. Stephen Jackson for his involvement and participation in that. We've been encouraging our members to participate in online training that talks about a number of important issues, including Indigenous histories and how we can understand and better represent and serve our community. Our Equity and Diversity Committee is currently planning a virtual symposium for members to take place early in the new year that will include Indigenous culture and policing content. And so this is going to be a constant evolution in so many ways, how we can continue to evolve and look for opportunities to enhance our and the service and the community's knowledge and understanding in many issues. We've also added, our training and recruiting has added an assessment of Indigenous awareness to our selection process for new applicants. That's an area that we know we need to constantly evolve. Another call that call 9.3 is to include representation of diverse Indigenous cultural backgrounds within our ranks. So we are very, very mindful of the fact that we need to improve and do our best to always represent and serve our diverse community. We continue to talk about how we can engage, attract, and truly connect with our entire community. COVID has had an impact on our recruiting activities, we'll continue to look for ways. For example, our Indigenous James Nightingale, he's also an HSRO in our Catholic board, and he works hard to engage our students, promote policing as a career to our diverse communities. And I think what we really need to recognize is it's not about recruiting, it's about truly engaging and connecting with all of our community. So It's at all levels, our elders, our students, our youth. This isn't about recruiting new police officers. This is about genuine connecting and engagement with our community. We look forward to specifically working with elders and leaders to see how we continue to grow and constantly not only increase our competency and understanding in these areas, but to truly change our numbers with how we represent the people that we serve. We also intend to explore how our Equity and Diversity Committee and its members, how they can work with our training and our community and our recruiting folks to make these connections. We've also looked at, so call 9.7. It's a call to partner with frontline organizations that work in service delivery, safety, and harm reduction for Indigenous people. So that includes so many different relationships, whether it be victim services, whether it being our elders, whether it being the university, other organizations. These are constant conversations that we'll be continuing to have. Call 18.13 is to engage in member education regarding gender diversity to address discrimination, especially homophobia and transphobia in policing. We have a member who is on our Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. She's also a member of the Serving with Pride Police Committee in the province, which is an excellent forum for learning not only how we can share with our community, but share how we can understand throughout the province with other police service, with other initiatives, community groups, so that we can truly build a new normal with respect to how we understand, communicate, and engage with our community. So Chair, I thought it was really important, kind of in honor of our first, in honor of September 30th and the work that our whole country is doing for National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, to kind of highlight some of those. So in the absence of any questions, I'll just stop there. Oh, sorry, I'll stop there for any questions, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for the chief? Not seeing any. Can you please, Mr. Mayor?
I just have a comment whenever you're ready. No
Yeah, we're ready. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. I just really want to thank you. I didn't know half of that. I knew kind of the other half, one half, but didn't know the other half. And you know, if you hadn't spoken about it, you know, not only would I would not have known, and the board, but so wouldn't the public. And I think the public often sometimes asks, like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? And rightly so. You know, they want to know. They want to know how are you responding to the issues that are important to the community from a policing point of view, that we're taking these issues seriously. Well, you just laid out exactly how you're taking it seriously. And so I just really want to thank you. I thank you as a board member. I thank you as the mayor of the city, because I hear it across many community groups that they're looking for that type of leadership from policing. And I really want to thank you as the chief for taking it seriously and empowering others within your organization to lead that way. And it's going to make I know it's going to make the service better, and it's going to make our community better. I know it will. So I'm so glad to see that these things are being addressed. So all the best as you continue to move forward on these initiatives. I really do thank you. It's good information.
Well, thank you for that. And I know I've said this on a number of occasions, but there are many, many people in our service who are leading this initiative within the service. So I have the privilege to talk about their excellent work, but it really, the list is too long to name. It's our people they're members of our community, they're committed to our community. It's all of the 350 people that work here that make all of that possible. It is certainly not Gord or Daryl. So that's really important to highlight.
Well, and just to add to the mayor's comments, Chief, can you pass on the mayor's comments to those involved, and on behalf of the board, offer our thanks and congratulations on their their initiatives and their continuing success in this area.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, that's the extent of my monthly report this month. I don't have any more. We've talked a number of things that I would have covered traditionally, but Daryl and Scott touched on a number of things. So that's, absent any questions, Mr. Chair, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Are there any new business items to bring up from anyone? Any member? No? Okay, so this brings us to the information items. And as you may have guessed, the next open meeting is in November, on November 18th at 2:30. There's another notation here about the Canadian Institute 12th Annual Law Policing Conference. That's November 8th to 9th. So if anyone is interested in participating, you can contact Leslie and she can arrange it. And now I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Billings, seconded by Mayor Guthrie. Thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, folks.